Product provided by Nintendo. Back in 2009, the world was introduced to Bayonetta on the PS3 and Xbox 360. This unique hack-and-slash action-adventure was the brainchild of Hideki Kamiya of Platinum Games. Starring a witch with 4 pistols on both her hands and feet, she took on the forces of heaven and hell with the assistance of her wicked hair. Even though the first game was received well by both fans and critics alike, a sequel would not have been possible without the help of an unlikely ally, Nintendo. You know, the people who gave us the kid-friendly Mario and Kirby franchises. To everyone's surprise, the sequel Bayonetta 2 was announced as a Wii U exclusive, a move that no one could have expected. But it makes sense considering Nintendo's partnership with Platinum Games on titles like Mad World, The Wonderful 101, and Star Fox Zero. Now, with a third installment on the horizon for the Nintendo Switch, Switch owners are now able to play the first 2 games on their portable home console hybrids. Which is great, because these games are fantastic and went seriously underappreciated when they came out, not selling too well. We're just going to say right off the bat that if you own a Nintendo Switch, you owe it to yourself to pick up these games if you're into the hack-and-slash genre. The question remains on which one of these 2 titles is better, with the first Bayonetta receiving a 90 on Metacritic and a user score of 8.3, but the second Bayonetta with a 91 and user score of 9. Let's find out if these scores weigh any value with the following categories: story, environments and stages, gameplay, and bosses. Keep in mind that in order to come out with this episode in a timely fashion, we used footage from both the Nintendo Switch and Wii U ports of the games. Just know that both versions look very similar, but they run extremely better on the Nintendo Switch. With that out of the way, the battle between Bayonetta 1 and 2 is about to break out.
Let's dance, boys!
The Bayonetta mythos tells the story of 2 mystical factions, the Lumen Sages of Light and the Umbra Witches of Darkness. These rivaling organizations own 2 relics, dubbed the Eyes of the World, used to oversee the passage of time, with each side owning 1 eye. However, these factions mysteriously disappeared from their home, the fictional European city of Vigrid, along with the Eyes of the World. Bayonetta is one of these Umbra Witches, who in the first game awakens from a 500-year slumber with her memory lost, possessing a jewel believed to be the left eye of the world. About 20 years after she awakens, she is informed that the right eye is most likely residing back in Vigrid. This leads her on a literal quest of self-discovery, coming across characters connected to her mysterious past. Yes, this game is very much an origin story, one with an epic amount of scale and an insane climax that we won't spoil here. Then comes Bayonetta 2, with our titular character knowing exactly who she is and her purpose in the grand scheme of things. On a day of Christmas shopping, angelic forces begin attacking during an air show, which causes Bayonetta to unleash a beast from hell to combat these forces. Unexpectedly, this beast turns on Bayonetta, killing her friend Jean and sending her to hell. The sequel plays more like a rescue mission to hell and back, but in the midst of this rescue mission, more revelations play out with connections to the previous Bayonetta, though admittedly less gracefully and more forced, which isn't necessarily a bad thing considering the insanely ridiculous nature of these games to begin with. It's not like you're going to be complaining about plot holes while cutting the wings off poor defenseless angels. However, the story does play a big part in Bayonetta, though it may not be the first thing players talk about, which is why there is still a winner in this battle, boiling down to the origin story versus the rescue mission. And in all honesty, the origin story is the better handled one this time around. When you're writing a new story from scratch, it is harder to mess up than a sequel with direct connections. This is why Bayonetta 1 wins the battle for story. Bayonetta 1 and 2 traverse throughout the realms of Earth and Purgatorio, which is the realm that separates the divine from the living, battling angelic forces, each with their own creepy baby faces. Each stage features linear progression, though go off on the beaten path and you may find some more enemies to take down along with entrances to challenge maps and the shop dubbed the Gates of Hell. There are also some impressive puzzles thrown into the mix, like dodging a bolt of lightning to slow down time and run across some water. Sometimes the stages will completely change the course of gravity, allowing you to run up the side of walls and ceilings. Hell, even gigantic enemies and bosses can seriously modify how a level is structured. There will even be a few levels that shy away from the normal hack and slash ones, like riding a motorcycle down a dangerous freeway or flying an R-Wing towards a mountain. If you have the Star Fox amiibo, of course. The stages both of these titles offer are impressive in similar ways. However, the similarities end at the way these stages are presented. I mean, compare this to this. Notice how Bayonetta 2 is severely less muddy brown than 1. Yes, the more saturated colors in 2 work out in its favor, though I would argue that it's more than just that. If you want a good idea of what to expect from both of these games, just look at their intro levels. Can you really expect a graveyard battle to top 1 on a freaking jet fighter? Seriously, I will never get tired of playing Bayonetta 2's Prologue. It is the definition of hype. Bayonetta 1 introduced some great concepts, while Bayonetta 2 amped them up to 11. It is because of this that Bayonetta 2 wins the battle for environments and stages. This is the category where things get a little tricky, because Bayonetta 1 and 2 feel almost identical when it comes to their gameplay, which is a very good thing since the first Bayonetta introduced an engaging combat system that is easy to learn but hard to master. Players must use combinations of hand and feet attacks in order to inflict massive damage on foes. Bayonetta is also equipped with guns on her hands and heels, which aren't that strong but definitely make for some stylish attacks. Using her friend Ronin's shop, the Gates of Hell, she can buy more weapons and firearms, along with fighting combos and lollipops that can heal or power her up. Filling up your magic meter will allow you to pull off torture attacks, allowing her to summon any kind of medieval device from Christian Grey's playroom to inflict on enemies, often resulting in an insta-kill. It's even more gratifying since filling up the magic meter can be a real pain, since getting hit once lowers it drastically. At least in the first Bayonetta. In the second one, it's a little more forgiving. And by a little, I mean a lot. But hey, there's difficulty settings. Don't complain about easiness. Come on guys, it's 2018. Nailing those dodges will result in Witch Time, which slows down time after every successful last-minute dodge. But the real fun begins at the end of a gigantic boss, when you summon a dark beast to finish your dirty work. No other quick-time event has ever been this satisfying. So if Bayonetta 1 and 2 are similar in this regard, is there really a better option? Well, yes there is, because while Bayonetta 2's combat feels almost exactly like its predecessor, it improves upon it by simply adding more to it. For example, it introduced a substitute to the torture attacks called the Umbran Climax, which basically makes Bayonetta's attacks even stronger. What also makes Bayonetta 2 better in this category is the sheer variety of enemies it introduces. Most of the enemies in the first game were from heaven, whereas 2 introduces more enemies from hell, and they are way more than just clones of the angelic forces, being unique in the way they behave and attack. One of them even turns you into a child and eats you. It's very scary. Regardless of their differences, you're going to have a hell of a time playing both games, since they have a solid gameplay foundation that Bayonetta 2 just so happens to build well off of, which is why it easily wins this battle for gameplay. Bosses are unique in the world of Bayonetta, because it can be tough to tell them apart. Is this giant hell spider a boss or is it just an enemy? I don't know because it only took me like 1 minute to kill. Then there are these gargantuan deities that are teased throughout entire stages, to the point where you know a boss battle will show up at the end. Again, and I know I've said this a lot of times about both games, but like I've been saying, both games have incredible boss fights that are wonders to behold and can be a true challenge. Platinum games are known for their impressive sense of scale and intensity, and luckily Bayonetta 1 and 2 excel in those fields. But there has to be a clear winner in this battle. Admittedly, this is the toughest category we've come across here on this series. Or is it? Because this can be linked back to the gameplay section where we talked about Bayonetta 2 having more enemy variety than that of its predecessor. There are still your villains from heaven as there are from hell. And let me tell you how hard it is to forget the first boss fight from Bayonetta 2 in the city. Talk about an opening act, dude, my god. What can be said about enemy variety in both games can also be said about the bosses. So of course, Bayonetta 2 wins the battle in this regard. So there you have it. With Bayonetta 1 winning the battle for story and Bayonetta 2 winning environments, gameplay, and bosses, the clear winner of this wicked game versus game goes to Bayonetta 2. Still, this doesn't mean that Bayonetta 2 is miles ahead of the first game, as there is still so much fun to be had in the first one as well. The sequel is only better because it contains the same greatness that game offered and then some. After all, isn't that what any great sequel has? Let's hope Platinum Games keeps this philosophy in mind when working on Bayonetta 3, which will go up against Bayonetta 2 to see if it can take home the title. Whenever it comes out, let's hope for later this year perhaps. Anyway guys and gals, thank you so much for watching this episode of Game vs. Game here on the Commonwealth Realm. If you liked this video, hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you're new to not miss our next battle. Hint, it involves a pink marshmallow. We'd also like to thank our patrons, including royal producer Kenyatta Ali, for supporting us on patreon.com/commonrealm. Find out what exclusive perks you can get by visiting our Patreon or clicking the link at the end of this video. In the meantime, guys and gals, we will see you in the next one.